Once upon a time, in the beautiful city of Lagos, there was a very wealthy and successful man called Olabisi. He had a lot of businesses and hotels around the city that he lived in. Despite his wealth, Olabisi had a very bad habit. He loved going after young teenagers who were below 18 years old. Unlike the other wealthy men who preferred matured, beautiful and sexy women and can afford any woman from any part of the world, Olabisi was different. He only enjoyed going after young teenage girls. He derived pleasure in destroying the future of young teenagers, luring them with expensive gifts and money. His targets were not the teenagers from wealthy families. Rather, he went after the ones from poor families whom he could easily attract by giving them expensive gifts and money. And once these teenagers fall victim to his lure, he sleeps with them, takes their virginity and moves to the next teenager. These girls would go back to their parents' house pretending to be innocent, but unknown to their parents, they have lost their virginity and pride. If any of Olabisi's victims should get pregnant, he would visit the family of the girl and bribe them with very expensive gifts. They would have no choice but to accept his bribes because they were poor and needed the money. This is the sum of 500,000 naira. I want you to abort the baby in your daughter's womb. That child is not mine, and if you decide to file a case against me, be rest assured you won't win me in court, because money speaks louder. He would say this to the poor family of the girls he had impregnated and walk away bragging and feeling proud. He derived pleasure in oppressing the poor and the weak. This was the only reason why he chose teenagers from a poor family. You could call Olabisi a weird man, but this was actually what made Olabisi happy, and he enjoyed doing it because it made him feel powerful. The reason why Olabisi slept with young teenagers was not because he was unmarried. He was actually married to a beautiful, dark-skinned and kind-hearted woman called Mary. Mary was a woman in her late 30s. They both had a young son called Prince World who was 5 years old. Mary was kind, compassionate, respectful and hardworking. She was the kind of woman that would be described as a virtuous woman because she had good manners and was very good to a fault. Mary was in charge of Olabisi's hotel businesses because she was very good at business. She grew the hotel from a simple guest house into a huge successful business with branches all over the country. It was from this business that Olabisi was getting the money that he was using to live a bad lifestyle, despite the fact that he was not even the one handling the business. He wasn't pleased with Mary, despite her great qualities, because Mary was not the woman of his dreams. She was not the woman he wanted to marry. Rather, he was forced by his parents to marry Mary, because that was the only way he would inherit the family's property. Mary's marriage to Olabisi was arranged by Olabisi's parents because they loved Mary so much since she was working for them and they saw how hardworking and devoted she was. So they decided that their son would marry her in order for her to continue taking care of the family business. Because of this, Olabisi married Mary simply to inherit the wealth from his family, and he continued maltreating her and calling her names, saying mean and hurtful words to her. He disrespects her and calls her names even in front of his friends when they visit him. His friends would laugh and make fun of Mary, calling her Olori Bruku, which meant foolish woman, useless woman. If not for my parents, what would a lousy and ugly woman like you be doing in my house? I'm ashamed to call you my wife. I can't go out with you because you make me feel ashamed. Olabisi would say these horrible words to his wife. Mary would do nothing but just weep and wish in her heart that she never married Olabisi. Mary's marriage to Olabisi was hell, but anyone who watched them from afar won't notice this. So they always admired Mary and wished they were the ones that got married to Olabisi. One day, Olabisi was driving out from his hotel when he saw a young, beautiful, light-skinned girl named Nnena. Nnena was a very beautiful girl who had just turned 17 years old. She was about to take her secondary school examination. She happened to have moved in with her parents a few weeks ago into a new apartment beside Olabisi's hotel. Olabisi couldn't take his eyes off Nnena. He admired her beauty and started to look for a way to approach her immediately. But after thinking for a while, he felt people around would see him and know about his bad behavior. If they see him making advances at a little teenage girl, they would start calling him names. Olabisi thought to himself, no, my bad behavior is meant to be kept a secret and far away from people, especially those who look up to me. I don't have to expose myself. Going to this girl right now will be a dent to my personality. If I approach her now, people will see me as a pervert. So Olabisi started to think of other ways to get close to Nnena. He began asking questions about Nnena in the street, and he was told that she just moved in with her parents into an apartment beside his hotel. When he asked for the description of the house, the information and descriptions they gave him sounded very familiar. Olabisi knew instantly that they were talking about his house, which he had just put up for rent some months ago. Olabisi contacted his real estate agent, asking him about the house, and he got more information about Nnena's family. He learned from the house agent that Nnena's family just recently paid for the house and packed in, so they had not been given a house receipt yet. Olabisi smiled and told the agent, since they just packed into the new house and have not been offered the receipt, don't bother giving it to them. I will do that myself. Bring the receipt to my office. The next day, the house agent visited Olabisi and gave him the receipts. Olabisi was very happy. Now, this is a perfect opportunity for me to get close to Nnena's family. I, Olabisi, I will not miss this opportunity. He drove out of his hotel immediately, went to the market and bought so many beautiful items and some groceries and drove straight to his rented apartment. When he got to Nnena's house, he knocked on the door. Nnena was the one who opened the door and welcomed him warmly. When Olabisi saw Nnena, he couldn't take his eyes off her. His eyes were moving from her head to her body. He was just looking at her like a hungry lion that was about to attack its prey. He almost forgot himself while lusting after her. Immediately, Nnena's parents walked into the living room and welcomed Olabisi. Olabisi introduced himself as the landlord of the house and told Nnena's father how delighted and happy he was to have them in his apartment. Nnenna's parents felt welcomed and were pleased to have him in their home. Mr. Olabisi presented them with the gifts and stuffs that he brought from the market, and he told them, I'm happy to have you here as my tenant. Please relax and feel at home. You are highly welcomed. I hope to relate so well with your family and become good neighbors if you don't mind. Nnenna's family were overjoyed and they all believed Olabisi to be kind. They were happy for the gift items they received and they gladly accepted the gifts from Olabisi with happiness because they felt the landlord was nice and generous. But little did they know that Olabisi had a secret and sinister agenda. As time went by, Olabisi would frequent their house. He would always visit them, buying them beautiful gifts, jewelries and wrappers for the mother and wine for the father. Olabisi became a very close family friend, and Mr. Olabisi went as far as introducing his wife and his son Prince Will to Nnenna's family. Because of this, they became a very close family friend. He made sure they never suspected a thing about him. He was not only cunning, but he was also calculative. Mary became a very close friend of the family and would always meet Nnenna's mother for advice on how to handle her marriage with Olabisi. Nnenna's family became Mary's closest companion. Most times, she would place Prince Will in the care of Nnenna's family whenever she had to travel on a business trip. Mary fully loved and trusted Nnenna's family. She took them like her own family and would always run to their family for refuge every time Olabisi beats her up. One evening, Mary had a hot argument with Olabisi which led to a very serious fight. Olabisi hit Mary so badly, ripping her clothes and beating her severely. When Mary couldn't take the beating any longer because it felt like she was dying, she ran out of the hotel with the little strength left in her, into the streets. Olabisi, being a very stupid and hot-tempered man, went after her and started chasing her around the streets. Out of fear of being killed by him, Mary had no option than to run to Nnena's house for refuge because it was very close to the hotel. Olabisi also chased her to Nnena's house, beating her up, even in the presence of Nnenna's parents. When Nnenna's father saw that Olabisi might kill Mary, he intervened and rescued Mary from Olabisi. This made Olabisi very furious. Then he stormed out of Nnenna's house in anger. Mary began to cry in pains. "Help me, help me. This man wants to kill me. I don't know what I've done to deserve this beating like this. God, why me? I'm scared of going back to that hotel. He will kill me." Nnenna's mother consoled Mary and told her to stop crying. Then she told Mary that she could sleep at their house if she decided not to go back to the hotel that evening until Olabisi is calm and no longer angry. When Olabisi got back to the hotel, he waited for Mary to come back, but Mary didn't go back to the hotel. Olabisi became very angry and began to think of how to get rid of Mary. "I think I will use this opportunity to chase Mary out of my life. I will file a divorce against her and file for custody of my son to make sure Mary never sets her eyes on Prince Will. Once she's out of the picture, it will be very easy for me to marry Nnenna. Yes, that's the smartest thing to do now," Mr. Olabisi thought to himself. That night, he went to the wardrobe and packed Mary's clothes and her other belongings into the trunk of his car. Since Mary was the one managing the hotel business, most of her belongings were in the hotel room which they slept in. So Mary and Olabisi hardly went to their main house. They preferred staying in the hotel to oversee the businesses, while they go to their main house only during weekends. So Mary had most of her belongings in one of the hotel rooms which they converted to their personal apartment. After Olabisi finished removing Mary's boxes and belongings into the trunk of his car, as if that was not enough, he entered his car, went to his own family house and brought out Mary's belongings and put them in the trunk of his car. He left Prince Will with their house help that night and carried Mary's belongings to Nnenna's family like a man without shame and self-worth. Mary was laying on a couch inside Nnenna's house when she heard a loud bang on the door. She knew instantly that it must be her husband, so she refused to open the door, while Nnenna rushed to get the door. As soon as Nnenna opened the door, she saw Olabisi raging with anger. "Hey, that stupid woman that I don't want to see her anywhere close to my hotel or my house. I have brought all her belongings and packed it outside, so she can leave to her father's house from here. Her services are no longer needed. She's free to go." As soon as Mary heard what her husband said, she rushed outside the house and held Olabisi by his clothes, asking him about their son. "How about my son? Where is Prince Will? You know he's still tender, so who will take care of him? Who will take care of him like his own mother? Don't deprive this boy of motherly care. I completely understand that you do not want me anymore, but at least allow me to go with my son. We can always come to visit you every month. I promise. Please, I can't go without my son. Please give me my son." Mary wept bitterly, pleading with Olabisi. "Well, let me make this clear to you. You will never set eyes on Prince Will until he is grown and has decided by himself to come and see you. If not, forget about him because you can never have him." Mary was devastated on hearing these words from Olabisi. She knew who her husband was. She knew that he meant every bit of his word. "I will expose you and your evil deeds. I will expose you to human rights. I will make sure I get my son from you. I don't want my son to be anything like you. I will bring him up in love and care. God will judge you, evil man, you beast." Olabisi let out a loud, wicked laugh and replied her saying, "You wish you can report me to human rights? I guess you have forgotten what happened in the last time you tried such, where your case file is not abandoned. You know you can never win me in court. I have all the connections it takes to put you behind bars. Nobody cares, so you can go ahead and try. Your words do not scare me." Olabisi walked away in anger. Mary fell on her knees and began to cry. She truly knew that she could not win Olabisi. She had tried in the past and she failed. She had no other option than to leave. The next day, she left Nnena's family house to her father's home. That was how Mary's marriage with Olabisi ended. Olabisi was very excited that he had gotten rid of his wife, and now it was time to start his new hunt. After Mary went back to her father's house, Olabisi continued visiting Nnenna's family. At first, Nnenna's father tried to advise him to bring back his wife and forgive her no matter what she did, but Olabisi politely refused. "Sir, I respect you a lot, but I don't want Mary in my life anymore. I don't want to have anything to do with that stupid woman again. It's over between us." "But what did she do?" Nnenna's father asked. "Sir, please, like I said before, I don't want to talk about her again. She's now in the past. Let's face the future." Nnenna's father knew he couldn't persuade Olabisi anymore. He knew he was not the kind of man to be advised because he never listens to anyone, so he gave up on advising him. Olabisi kept on showering Nnenna and her parents with expensive gifts, buying different kinds of expensive lace materials for Nnenna's mom, and frequently giving a huge amount of money to her father. Each time he visits Nnenna's family, he would often ask Nnenna to see him off. When Nnenna sees him off to his car, Olabisi would tell Nnenna how beautiful she is and would give her a huge amount of money for her to buy whatever she wanted for herself. At some point, Nnenna's father became suspicious of Olabisi because of the way he often brings gifts for him and his family, despite the fact that they never asked him for anything before. It felt unusual to him. One evening, he sat on his couch and began to think. He wondered if there was something more than what Olabisi wanted from his family, because it was very strange that he always asked Nnenna to see him off whenever he comes to visit them. He decided to talk to his wife about it. "My dear, have you noticed anything strange about Mr. Olabisi? He's always giving us so much, even without us asking. It's starting to make me uncomfortable. I also observed that he always asks Nnenna to see him off whenever he visits. I hope it's not what I'm thinking. You always read meaning too much into everything. What's wrong with Olabisi asking Nnenna to see him off? Stop overthinking. He's just a generous man, nothing more." Nnenna's mother responded, trying to convince her husband that there was nothing wrong with it. Weeks passed into months. It was close to the secondary school exam season. Time for Nnenna to take her high school final exam. When Olabisi heard about this, he offered to sponsor Nnenna's exam and gave her mother a huge amount of money for whatever expenses their exam would take. But that evening, he felt uncomfortable about letting Nnenna go for the exam without letting her parents know his intentions. What if he gets to the university and fall in love with another small boy? It will be hard for me to convince her to marry me, because I know how all these teenagers behave, he thought to himself. So he decided it was time for him to ask for Nnenna's hand in marriage. So that fateful Saturday morning, he arrived at Nnenna's house and met her father and mother in the sitting room watching news from the television. As soon as they saw him, they gave him a warm welcome and offered him a seat as usual. Olabisi sat down for a moment, cleared his throat and began. "You know, I have been a very good friend of this family, and I really love and wish to be a part of this great family." Nnenna's parents looked at each other in disbelief when they heard this from Olabisi, even though they did not fully understand what he meant by being a part of their family. Nnenna's father smiled and told him, "You're already a part of our family, and you're always welcome to our home. You're more than just a friend to us." "Well, that's not what I mean," Olabisi replied. "I mean, I want to be clear about my intentions. I want to ask for your daughter's hand in marriage. I want to marry your daughter." Nnenna's father became suddenly angry when he heard what Olabisi said. His heart was boiling with anger and rage, but he did not want to unleash it on Olabisi because of the way he had been towards them. So he faked a smile and kindly said, "Do you realize that Nnenna is only 17 years old, not yet 18? Besides, I don't want her to get married right now. I want to make sure she goes to the university first before thinking about marriage." But Olabisi didn't back down. Instead, he persisted and told Nnenna's father, "Don't worry too much. Once I marry her, it will be my responsibility. I will ensure she goes to the university and attains any level of education she desires. I promise you that. I can also send her abroad to further her education. She's too young. I don't think she knows what she wants at this stage of her life. Suddenly, Nnena's mother interrupted her husband when he was still speaking and told Olabisi, "Don't mind my husband, sir. We'll think about it and get back to you. There's nothing wrong with your proposal." Mr. Olabisi didn't get the answer he needed from Nnenna's parents, so he felt devastated and left their home in frustration. When Olabisi got home that night, he couldn't eat or sleep. He sat down trying to think of a way to convince Nnenna's parents to let him marry their daughter. After hours of careful thoughts, he came up with a plan. The plan he came up with was to buy a car for Nnenna's father, and she overheard him complaining recently of not having a good car. Buying him a car will make him change his mind immediately. I know the wife won't be a problem, but I need every possible way to convince this man. It has to be something huge and expensive as a car, Olabisi told himself. The following week, Olabisi went to an automobile company and bought a brand new car. It was a Friday morning, and the atmosphere was bright and filled with a chilling breeze. Nnenna's father was sitting outside his compound when he saw a luxurious car approaching. At first, he thought it was Olabisi, but after waiting for a while, the car was parked carefully at the side of his compound. A man got out of the car, greeted Nnenna's father, and then handed him the car keys and left. Nnenna's father was confused. He tried to call the man back, but he had already left, and it wasn't long before Olabisi drove into his compound in his own car. He got out of his car and approached Nnenna's father and told him, "Sir, this car now belongs to you. After you mentioned the other day that you didn't have a car, I took it upon myself to make you happy and buy you one as my future father-in-law." Nnenna's father was filled with joy, and his affection for material things made it impossible for him to turn down the car. He began to praise Olabisi with big names. "Odogu, my great-in-law, Okogo, you are welcome to the family. In fact, what money cannot do to a man does not exist." Imagine Nnenna's father, a man of principles, changing his mind within a minute just because of a car, forgetting about Olabisi's horrible character and the way he treated his previous wife. That was how Olabisi bought the heart of Nnenna's parents, and they accepted his proposal to marry Nnenna. When Nnenna heard about her parents' plan to marry her off to Olabisi, she was deeply upset and sad. At first, she refused. She recalled how Olabisi used to beat his ex-wife Mary, and she knew she couldn't marry someone like him. She suspected that there was something wrong with Olabisi. But Nnenna, being such a young girl, didn't know much, and her mother began to advise and persuade her to marry Olabisi. "You see, my daughter, there's nothing out there in the streets. You can't find a young and wealthy man like Olabisi and reject him. By the time you finish your WAEC examination and graduate from high school, you'll realize that life is not a bed of roses. Marry this man, and you will never lack anything or regret it." "But mommy, this is the same man who beat up his ex-wife and almost killed her. We all saw how Auntie Mary suffered in his hands, and you're asking me to marry him. You don't want me to be alive?" "Well, you're just a young girl. What do you know? Your Auntie Mary was a chronic cheat. She was cheating on her husband, and that's why he chased her away. You're just a small girl. You don't know anything." "Really? Mom, you mean she cheated? But Auntie Mary is not that kind of woman." "Shut up. What do you know? Just close your mouth if you have nothing to say. I can see you love to suffer. Go ahead and suffer more." "I don't want to suffer, Mama." "Fine. Do what your father and I asked you to do. We are your parents, and we will never deceive you." That was how Nnenna was convinced to marry Olabisi, by making her believe that she was going to live a big and flamboyant lifestyle. When Olabisi heard that Nnenna had accepted his marriage proposal, he became very happy and started promising Nnenna heaven on earth. "Don't worry, I'll send you to the university of your choice and buy you a car so that you won't have to take commercial bus to school. I will start a business for you. You can study from my house. It's not a big deal. You can take care of all that, trust me." Nnenna believed all that Olabisi said and accepted to marry him wholeheartedly because of his promises. After her bride price was paid in full by Olabisi, she moved into his house. Few months after Nnena got married, she was expecting her husband to fulfill his promises, like registering her for JAMB so that she could continue her education at the university. But Olabisi didn't make a move. One evening, she decided to speak with him about her education, but she received the shock of her life when Olabisi got very upset at the mention of it. Olabisi became furious and out of control told her, "You are not a very thoughtful person. I can see your parents trained a fool. So you think the reason I married you is for you to start schooling and waste my money? For your information, you are here to make babies and nothing more." Nnena was very shocked and surprised to hear this from Olabisi. "But you promised to send me to school and buy me a car to go to school with. Why are you angry when you made those promises yourself?" "Well, it is just a promise. I never said I must fulfill it. I've spent so much on you and your family. So sit down and give me children. That is your duty. You're not allowed to go to school." Nnena became frustrated. It dawned on her that she was in deep trouble, especially after she had bragged to her friends about enrolling in the university and coming to school with an expensive car. The next morning, she rushed to her parents' house, telling them everything Olabisi had said the night before. Her parents were deeply upset to hear what was happening to their daughter. They decided to go and plead with Olabisi, asking him to at least let their daughter go to school. Olabisi was very angry and furious, but he controlled himself, not wanting to unleash his anger. As soon as they left, Olabisi started to scold Nnena. "So it has come to the point where you report me to your parents at the slightest disapproval, right? Don't worry, I will deal with your excesses," he said to her before walking away. Nnena, being a young girl, became scared of Olabisi. His constant threats made her very scared. One evening, Nnena stood on the balcony, having a phone conversation with her best friend, sharing what she had been going through in her marriage. Her friend advised her to run away since she wasn't pregnant yet and come to stay with her at the school lodge. Nnena decided to take her friend's advice. However, unknown to her, Olabisi was standing behind the door, eavesdropping on the conversation. He was angry when he found out that Nnena was planning to run away, but he kept quiet and pretended he didn't know anything and decided to start watching her closely. The next morning, Olabisi pretended he was going out. He already knew about Nnena's plan to run away from his house. So before he left the house, he took Nnena's phone, switched it off and put it in his pocket. Olabisi left the house to see what Nnena would do, but he didn't go far. He went somewhere close with his car, and then he returned secretly on foot without her knowledge, and he began to watch her through a CCTV. The house was quite big, so it was hard for Nnena to notice. That morning, Nnena had no idea what was going on. She was too focused on gathering her clothes, shoes and bags. She didn't notice that her phone was missing. After she was done, she took her bath, got dressed and was about to leave when she started searching for her phone, but she couldn't find it. But it didn't stop her mission. She knew her friend's number offhand and decided that she would borrow a phone from someone to call her when she gets to her hostel. Just as she was about to leave, Olabisi appeared in front of her and delivered a heavy blow to her head. Nnena stumbled and fell to the ground unconscious. Olabisi quickly became scared and thought to himself, "Have I killed Nnena? What if she's dead?" Suddenly, Olabisi heard a loud bang on the door. He became confused and didn't know what to do. He peeped through the door hole and saw Nnena's parents knocking. He became very scared and a shockwave ran through his spine. He wondered why her parents were at his house that morning. The loud bang came again and Olabisi began to tremble. Will Nnena's parents find out what Olabisi had done to their only daughter? Do you think Nnena is dead? We'll find out in the next episode. Stay tuned for part 2.